Welcome, everyone, to DEI After 5, the show that focuses on topics across diversity, equity, and inclusion with some of the brightest minds in the industry. Here's your hostess, inclusive culture curator, and coach, Sacha Thompson.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of DEI After 5. Okay, so if you have been listening or watching for any time, you know that I always ask people, my guests, about self-care. And so many of them have talked about going outside, taking a walk, getting into nature. But, I realize that though that is wonderful and beautiful for some folks, it's not necessarily accessible to everyone. And so I want to have a conversation today about the accessibility of the outdoors. So this is a little bit different than some of the other topics that we have, but I'm really excited about this because I truly believe that if we're talking about access and we're talking about opportunities to create wellness and self-care, that we do think about combining those two things together. And so my guest today is Carmela Montenegro, who is a specialist in this area. So Carmela, welcome to the show.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Really excited to be here. I'm glad we're doing this.
Good. So for folks who may not know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so again, my name is Carmela Montenegro. I am a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant for the outdoor industry. Most of my work is for the private sector in the outdoors, but a lot of my research in my graduate work and my undergraduate work has been in accessibility outdoors and helping people get outside and talking about that mental health aspect. So I'm excited to chat with you all today about how that's good for us.
Yeah. So, I'm just very curious because, that's just me. How did you get into, how did this become a topic or, something that you were interested in?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I currently live in Colorado, but I wasn't born in Colorado. So I grew up in the Chicago area. Child of immigrant parents. My parents didn't want me to go outside. There's a lot of safety issues. And that's a story I hear a lot when I talk to first generation immigrants, urban students, a lot of people who are not as comfortable going outside, especially when it comes to like insurance barriers, language barriers, and accessibility barriers. So I didn't really go outside often growing up, but when I had opportunities to go outside, I definitely lied to my parents about going outside. I said I was hanging out with my friend for the weekend. We went on a camping trip, went to a science camp. It was an environmental camp back in, I think, my summer after my 8th grade. Learned how to canoe, how to do some trail work, taking care of the environment. And a lot of those little things piled up to me wanting to be an outdoor educator when I had the opportunity in my undergrad. I originally went to school for music education. I wanted to enhance my education learning, so I took an outdoor ed job. And that just started piling on to a point where I live in colorful Colorado. I absolutely love it. And along the way, I just picked up a lot of people, learned a lot of why this is good for me, why I was so drawn to the outdoor spaces. It was really good for my mental health. It was really good to get some fresh air. It allowed me, frankly, some freedom from my immigrant parents who really wanted to understand what I was doing. In my opinion, have a little bit more control, wanted to understand, they wanted to protect me. And I totally understand that. But being outside was really good for my personal freedom to a point where I ended up living here.
Yeah. There's just so much that you said that just reminds me of like, wow, I never thought of it quite that way. Right. Like I too have, have immigrant parents. But I was slightly different because I grew up in Virginia. And so it was one of those things where we don't want you sitting in the house, just go outside. Just go outside. And I found myself, even as a child, we had a fairly big fenced in backyard. And I would, first of all, I love playing in mud puddles, like toes in the mud. And I've later learned that is a form of earthing and connecting with the earth. I was in 4-H camp. I went to 4-H camp every summer. And so we learned, canoeing and going out into the woods and understanding the different trees. And hindsight now being 2020, at the time as a child, I was like, my mom's just trying to get rid of us for a week.
That's cute.
Right. But now I'm just like, I learned so much about just enjoying the outdoors and the peace and the calm, right? I was talking to someone yesterday about just being near water does something for me, right? Like it does something psychological for me, because I can't be upset. Like I find that I just like those emotions don't come to me when I'm near water, or if I am upset and I'm near water, it's like, okay, you're here, you're at peace.
Awesome.
And so I love and appreciate kind of your journey in this, because it comes across to me as if it was a calling, right? Like it was calling to you that this is a place and a space that you needed.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I was going to ask, mind me asking what your parents' country of origin is?
So my father's side of the family is from Barbados, and that's where I was born. And my mother's from St. Vincent. So
Gotcha.
100 miles. Yeah, 100 miles apart. So very Caribbean born. Cool. But again, even now too, when I'm there, I'm rarely in the house. I'm outside. I'm on, on the veranda, wherever. And I'm near a beach. I'm always, I need to see the water. I need to be near the water, all of that. So yeah, it's very much a huge part of who I am.
Good, so that's awesome.
But I do want to ask you, now that this is your profession, right? This is your research has been in this space. What is the accessibility piece of that, right? Like how did those merge?
Yeah. So I originally started my undergrad talking about DEI, talking about accessibility. I was an outdoor educator for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And one of my tasks as the marketing person, I eventually switched from music education to marketing, is to build collaborations with several programming in our university. So that included like international students, urban students that usually have not left the Milwaukee area, and first generation students, scholarship students that went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And it was really important to me that we get these people outdoors. We wanted, one, our programming was very low. Not a lot of our trips had to get canceled. And me and my director were like, okay, let's see if we expand our student base, see if that's going to help us out. And a lot of our trips got filled. They were telling their friends. They had a lot of social trust in us. They were telling everybody. And it was very empowering for me to work with them, and they would give me feedback on how I could better educate my team in the outdoor, on the outdoor ed team, figure out how to be more transparent, how to communicate with them. Simple hand gestures. We had a lot of Koreans. We have to do like the open hand thing, for example. A lot of reassurance for those that have high anxiety, go through a lot of medical training and a lot of some psychological training and how to treat them a little bit differently, which I think was really good. But a lot of that research has really taken me to this point. Now that I live in Colorado, I actually took a break talking about DEI work between my undergrad and to working as a DEI consultant in the private sector. And I think accessibility ties in really well because I recognize there has to be a lot of authenticity on the business side when we're talking about accessibility. For example, I do some work with ski resorts here, and a lot of ski resorts are recognizing, okay, we're increasing prices, visitorship is going down. How do we really lead into that? A lot of ski resorts and mostly ski resorts, let's pick on that right now, are focusing on diversifying into owning hotels, going into bike parks over the summer. And although those are diversifying, the environment is struggling, put it frankly. So, ski resorts are reaching out to me saying, okay, we need to diversify our customer base. How can we do that? I say, okay, we can do well with marketing, but when they get here, we don't want them to feel like they got the rug pulled out from underneath them. So here are ways that, one, we can work on the internal side. That way the marketing looks more authentic. The company aligns better to the demographic that you want to treat. And then when the clientele does show up at the ski resort or the bike park, whatever it may be, the team is more slated to be prepared to hold their hand, over explain, not in a bad way, but in a way that'll put them at ease, especially when they come from a high anxiety environment. And this is like one of their first times to be in the mountains like this. And also we have a lot of, where I live in Summit County, there's a lot of Paralympians and a lot of people that want physical accessibility when they're going to ski resorts, bike parks, et cetera, and figuring out how to educate their outfitting teams, figuring out how to use proper language, figure out how to experiment with different clothings. That way, when these individuals do come in, they're more prepared to support them throughout their whole journey, whatever that may look like. There's a lot.
Love that. Yeah, so what I'm thinking of as you're talking really is just it's DEI work, right? Like it's making sure that things are that people feel included, right? It's the equity and the inclusion part of this work, because it's not just, oh, we want to put someone in a wheelchair in a picture, right? How are they able to use the park? How are they able to use the ski resort? And making sure that those barriers to entry are not there, right? That whole process is thought through. And what I love what you said about it's also training the staff on what they need to know about particular populations, right? You can't assume, oh, just because someone is here, they know everything that they need to know. There may be some elementary or some beginner conversations that need to take place on the why something is the way that it is. And so it really seems to be a more holistic approach to access, right? And making sure that if we're going to make this a more inclusive environment, it truly has to be inclusive from the moment you hear about us through your time with us and beyond.
Oh yeah. One thing that I do ready work with at REI. So the acronym is Race, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion. One thing that I'm revamping with my team right now is figuring out that customer journey. What do they need? What do they need to feel safe? And one thing that was one of my strongest suits back in my undergrad was measuring Hofstede's cultural insights. So we look at the 6 dimensions, like power distance, uncertainty avoidance, and those are the 2 primary ones that we look through. Like, are they going to perceive us as equals, or do they perceive us as below us or above us? And then uncertainty avoidance, are they more likely to take risks? Are they less likely to take risks? How much do we have to essentially over-explain and essentially comfort them as we're helping them make decisions? And those are like 2 categories that I really consider as we're looking at the customer cycle.
Yeah.
Because, it's holistic. We have to be accurate and well thought out.
Yeah. And, the other thing about what I'm hearing from you is this is not just HR, right? You haven't mentioned anything about employees, like hiring. What I'm hearing is this is product design and development. This is marketing. This is customer care, all of those other parts of the business that so many companies kind of overlook when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Like they're just looking at it from the employee standpoint. But I appreciate, and this is something, I talk about quite often, is you have to know who your customer is. You have to know the industry and how are you going to better their experience and improve the industry and be like an industry leader in this space. And so, how you're describing this and the terminology really is about business goals and imperatives and making sure that that customer journey. You know what they're experiencing. You know what risks they're willing to take and not take. And if they're even a community that is so risk averse that as soon as you lose that trust with them, they're going somewhere totally different, right? Like they're not going to show up ever again. And so it's part of, the psychology of it. Like
Yep.
it's all tied into this. And that's why, I love this conversation, because this is the DEI work that I don't think a lot of people hear or see. And so I just want to, put that out there as like our
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you.
The other thing that came to mind as you were talking was, and I cannot recall, and it'll probably come to me later on, about, it was a park. It was an outdoor, like for kids. So like swing set, like a playground. That was supposed to be like the first in this particular area that was wheelchair accessible. And
Yes.
they did a whole, PR campaign, and they were so excited about it. But there was no way to get from the parking lot to
Yeah,
the playground.
I heard about that.
That was accessible. And I'm just like, that is such a miss, right? And so again, it talks about the customer experience, that customer journey. You're thinking about the outcome, and yep, we're doing this and we're checking this box to create this, but you're bringing attention to the fact that you didn't clearly think through all of the pieces of the puzzle.
Oh gosh, yeah. I was working with a client a couple of months back, and they were presenting some research, and they go, yeah, we sent everybody this survey in several languages. It was done in English, Spanish, and like 2 other languages. Unfortunately, I heard the email sent out to take the survey was only in English.
Of course.
I was like, so close, so close. And they were wondering why their numbers were a little off from the previous year. And I was like, you were so close. Like the intent was there, but the delivery, I just, very close. I think that's why it's really important to be able to map out that customer experience, and it's easier for me because I'm one of the demographics. I belong to the demographics that they're looking at. So I'm able to push back a little bit, give a little bit of feedback, say, okay, can you give me a little bit more on the Googling process? What are you actually researching? How many people do you actually want to talk to when you go into the store? How much are you willing to spend? Is it worthwhile? How will you determine if it's worth actually using, or if you want to return it, regret it? And I think that's something that a lot of people neglect. You got to be very meticulous about the little details. It annoys some of my teammates, but it's really important for a reason.
It annoys me. But no, what you're saying is this is why it is important to have diverse perspectives on these teams that are creating these products and services, right? It's not just good enough to have a homogenous team that thinks they know everything about everything when they don't, and they don't have that lived experience. It is so important and critical to have someone, or at least someone that is aware of like, hey, we might need to have some other voices here at this table as we're planning this, to get feedback, to get a better understanding. There is a saying in the disability community, nothing, for us without us. And so I think that is so important, right? Like it does not make sense to create. When I was in tech, I heard some bad stories. And I'm just like, you're creating something for the visually impaired, and you don't have anyone that's visually impaired on the team.
Oh yeah, representation is super duper important. Like in the outdoor industry, there's a lot of well-intended people in historically privileged demographics. And, it's really good to have that allyship, especially when they're using really good language, but there's only so far that it can take you. There's definitely things that they'll miss that people like you and me will be able to see. Training, there's going to be language barriers. For a good portion of the team that I work with, several of them identify as like non-binary, neurodivergent, interracial, and it's just, most of the senior leadership team, again, will use well-intended language, but there's definitely little things there that they're not paying attention to or that are easily looked over. And that's why it's important for me to be there to kind of bridge that gap. I'm not management in any sort at REI, but I think having that communication gap, I'm the translator, essentially. I think
And that's what
what
a
we
lot of
do.
this work is, right? A lot of it is translating. And yeah,
it's a lot of translating.
A lot of putting people back in their places. Like,
like you're doing great. Just chill for a hot second, you know.
But again, I think it's all good intentions, right? I don't think anyone. I will say I have not experienced anyone that is actually doing this work with ill intent in their heart, right? They truly do want to make a difference. But at the same time, you have to also humble yourself and know your limitations. And some of that is lived experience. And if you don't have that lived experience, then you need to be humble enough to be able to center someone who does to get you to where you need to be. And in a space and in a time where we are so taught about rugged individualism and I have to do this. This is the type of work and this is the type of space where we need to work as a collective. We need to work as a community. And so the more and more I'm kind of listening to you in this space, it is pointing out to me the importance of having that strong team and having the right people that are a part of that team in order to move this in a way that will make an impact, a positive impact.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was kind of going into this. I was listening to Lily Zheng's DEI Deconstructed on the way here, actually, talking about how DEI people are the translator. That's from Lily Zheng's book. Essentially the importance of having a team, like there's not going to be one person who's going to be the champion for the whole team. It's going to be a collective, and representation is super important in that collective, especially when they come together, brainstorm ideas. For the teams that I've been in, it's really important to get a diverse set of voices and bring one or two ideas together. That way, when we do bring it to senior leadership, it's more focused. We're not all over the place, which is very tempting to do. It's very easy to like, here's the menu of things that we want. Each meeting, I try and focus the team. Okay, what are one or two things that me and the management can do? That way things are actually happening. But I'm also one of those people, like, I don't want to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. If there's no agenda, I'm not doing it, you know? Especially how DEI work is emotionally exhausting and taxing, especially not just me, but for the rest of the team when it uses resources and time. And if we want to make a true impact on representation and training the team, I think it's important to come in tactically, especially since in the past year, what I've experienced is that the outdoor industry has been wavering a little bit when it comes to equity efforts. And I think being tactical is one of my competitive advantages because I understand from my time in outdoor education how important it is to stay within budget, to stay within timeline. And it's essentially like working in a nonprofit. You have to be tactical, lean, and you have to learn how to get the buy-in from people even when they've already been working like 60 hours a week and figuring out how to put in another training. And that goes all, for what I'm seeing at least, all across the outdoor industry. We just have to be lean and predictable.
But also very intentional, right? Like that's what I'm hearing. You have to be very prescriptive and intentional in how you're using those resources, how you're using your time, how you are slowly moving the needle forward, regardless of, for lack, pardon the pun, like the environment, right? Like the greater DEI environment in the world, well, the nation, you have to be very intentional about those small steps. So when I started at the top, I spoke about how many of the folks that come on to the show, I always ask, and the question is coming up for you, but, I always talk about, like, how do you fill your cup? And so many people talk about that outdoor space as a part of their self-care. How is that, or are you seeing that being more and more the case, especially now that we're out of this pandemic, we're semi out of the pandemic, and people getting outdoors more right now that it is a bit more accessible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Self-care in the outdoors, super duper important, especially where I live. So I'm going to tell a little bit about where I live. I live in Summit County, Colorado. Where I live about a half hour from 5 major ski resorts. And that is kind of unfathomable for most Americans to have such access to the outdoors. Growing up in Chicago, we had to drive 45 minutes to like go to this snow-filled dumpster in southern Wisconsin. It got the job done. That's where I learned. It was great. But there's a reason why Outside Magazine, a lot of influencers, a lot of people want to come to this area is because the accessibility of the outdoors is unprecedented. And some of my research in my undergrad, one thing that we did, I was an intern for, the Wisconsin Bike Federation. I did marketing, I did research, I supported them on little marketing thingies. But one thing that was really profound to me is that one thing that we really wanted to do was something called, Jane's Walk, I think it was called. So the plan was for the month of April, the Wisconsin Bike Federation and lots of nonprofits and volunteers would essentially host a walk anywhere from like 10 minutes to a couple hours, full day, whatever it may be. But the purpose of that was to get people in low green space communities to get outside and build that community. What we found doing that research, I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, a lot of them felt more confident in their community, especially since they built community and they found spaces where they could take their kids, they could feel safe. And that set the precedent of why this work is super important to me. And that research helps me understand REI's campaign Outside in 5. So the Outside in 5 campaign is something like access to green space within 5 minutes through transit, walking, car from your living area. And what they're finding is a lot of people feel more grounded. You mentioned earlier of wanting to be in water. I love water. I'm Filipino. A lot of fishers in my family. Being in the water just feels right. But for some people, they feel better when their toes are in dirt, when their hands are in dirt. Japanese have like nature bathing, for example. But anyway, the mental health benefits are wild. The sense of peace, greenery is really good for the mental health. Oxygen, I don't have the data off the top of my head, is really good for your mental health. But one other study that I found really profound by, I think it's UC Irvine and Ella Bean or Keene. It had an E sound in it, but they took vets at high risk for, I think, PTSD or suicide ideation on a whitewater rafting trip. And after 3 days, it's essentially like, I'm paraphrasing here, it's essentially like PTSD had never happened. And I think the mental health benefits of going in the middle of nowhere, reconnecting with what we were meant to be with is really good for our mental health. And doing this in my undergrad in Milwaukee compared to now, you can see a sudden shift. I would take my students backpacking on anywhere between 2 to 9 days. Backpacking, for those who are not familiar, is essentially like camping. Everything's in your backpack and you like go without your phone for like 2 to 9 days. I love it doing it here and there. A lot of them, what is it? I was reading about this a couple of years ago and how not having your phone, sleeping outside for at least 6 to 7 nights can reset your circadian rhythm. So if you have insomnia or if you're struggling with like sleep anxiety, this is one really good method to naturally like reset you and do better.
Ooh, you should have never told me that because I have
Uh-oh.
insomnia. So I'm like, I'm about to just disappear.
It's good for you.
7 days.
It's good for you. I'm about to go backpacking in a month and I'm like, yes, my circadian rhythm's going to be reset. I am good.
Oh, yes. You know, so I appreciate just so much of that because it just, again, has me thinking of, you know, what we take for granted in just even the 5 minutes of taking a quick walk outside or, you know, being near in nature, and what that can do for your mental health, what it can do for your anxiety, what it can do for just, again, a whole body reset. You know, like before we were recording, you know, I was joking about this plant taking over my office. But it was very intentional in putting plants in my office because I do not have a green thumb by any stretch of the imagination, but I find that having them in here, I'm just like, okay, I just feel so much better. And again, it's that oxygen exchange, right? In the, what is the word? The cycle that breathe, you know, the cycle of breathing. So before we kind of transition, Carmela, tell me about your, like, how do you fill your cup? You talked about you're going hiking, backpacking, you've done that. You know, what are some other things that you do?
Let's go on the outside aspect. I'm outside all the time. I'm fortunate to work for the outdoor industry where I'd done a workshop in the outdoors. Like we went for, what is it, 5-10 minute hike. I did a workshop outside and I was like, this is great. I could do this for the rest of my life. I am an avid snowboarder and skier. Doesn't mean I'm great at it. But for days when the weather's not doing great or I'm just feeling really tired, some inside activities, I really like to cook. Where I live in Colorado, the food is, well, where I live in Chicago, I think food is meh out here. I love to cook. I love to read. I love learning. And I love to experiment with food. Half of the time it's not great, but you know, it's all about learning. You know what I mean?
It's the process. It's
Exactly.
the process. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So if folks wanted to get in contact with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, if you want to get in contact with me, the two best ways is via email, Carmela at notmadjustmisunderstood.com. Oop, right there. And my LinkedIn, I am linkedin.com/in. Oh, and then Carmela-Montenegro. So those are the two best ways to reach me if you want to see my content. On my LinkedIn and on my website, I share a lot of resources that I actually use with my clientele. One of my favorite things that I do with REI and my other clientele is we take a piece of content, we watch a 3 to 5 minute video, and then we just talk about it. That way we get to practice using good language, build that psychological safety with me and the rest of the team, and it's just building itty bitty muscles. So that's something that I love to do, sharing resources. I think power sharing is, or power resource sharing is power sharing. There we go.
I love it. Carmela, thank you so much for joining me today, and joining us for this conversation. Like I said, this is one that's a little bit different than what we've done, but it goes down that path of, again, self-care and access and ensuring that it is a holistic process with a team that is competent in making sure that they're looking at it from a 360-degree angle. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, this plant, I'm about to, Bertha, we named her Bertha. So yeah,
she's beautiful.
She's taking over. But thank you so much for joining today.
Thank
you. And
everyone,
thank you so much for being a part of this week's episode of DEI After 5. Hopefully you've been motivated to go outside for a few minutes, take in some fresh air, take in a quick walk, or get by the water, do something that is going to fill your cup. And until next time, have a good one.